What is up, people? Welcome to Middle of the Ring. This is Top 10 Countdown. We will be looking at the top 10 best heels in WWE ECW WCW. Let's get started. Number 10. So, in 2014, Seth Rollins became arguably one of the most hated men in WWE's modern history after turning his back on the Shield, Roman Reigns, and Dean Ambrose, and aligning himself with Triple H and Stephanie McMahon's The Authority. Seth Rollins pretty much had heat on him that was electrifying, no point intended. Which ultimately caused Dean Ambrose to become a bigger face and Roman Reigns to kind of get somewhere in the middle. Because I think a lot of people thought that Roman Reigns should have been the one to deflect to the Authority. But arguably, Seth Rollins was the better heel of the three, in my opinion. Therefore, Seth Rollins pretty much was the right man for the job. Afterwards, he became Money in the Bank winner and went on to cash in his Money in the Bank contract at WrestleMania, being the first wrestler to do so, beating Roman Reigns at WrestleMania during the Roman Reigns Brock Lesnar feud. So, number 10, obviously going to go to Seth Rollins. All right, number 9. In 1999, coincidentally, Chris Jericho shocked the world by not only debuting on Raw, but in the middle of the Rock, aka the Great One, the Brahma Bull, the most electrifying man. Okay, that's too much. So, Chris Jericho interrupted The Rock on his promo, which is always a no-no and not knowing to the newly come Chris Jericho. But this ultimately put Chris Jericho as one of the top heels automatically. Over the years, Chris Jericho has been probably a better heel than a better face. Although when he's a face, it is still slapstick crack jokes all day. But when he's a heel, it's more deep, dark, and sinister, almost scary like. Chris Jericho, arguably, I think he's a 9-time or 10-time Intercontinental Championship holder, which makes him the most Intercontinental Championship reigns, and I believe he's like a 4 or 5-time WWE champion. But he's best when he's the heel. So number 9, Chris Jericho. All right, number 8, we got the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. Mid to late 80s, this probably was one of the most hated men in the WWE, just because he was rich. Pretty much the only man to come into WWE and buy his own championship when he couldn't buy it from Andre the Giant. Actually, he did buy it from Andre the Giant. They just stripped the $1 Million Man of it and said he could not get the title that way. So, he's such a heel that he just went out and bought his own championship, making him the $1 Million champion. With that historic laugh of his, and the fact that he was a pretty good damn wrestler. After beating you, he stuffed $100 in your mouth. Now, that might be a little bit humiliating, but you got $100 after the match, so you can't be that all bad. At the end of the day, $1 Million Man, definitely one of the top heels in WWE. So number 7, we're going to give that to Randy Orton. Definitely one of the best heels I've ever seen. Always got a good reaction as far as heat with him on from any program he was in. With it was Triple H, Undertaker, Mick Foley, John Cena. The list goes on and on. When he's a heel, he is definitely the best at it. And right now, I know he's working face, but sooner or later he'll get back to heel. I know he says he enjoys being a heel rather than being a face, gives him more freedom. So, number 7, Randy Orton. Number 6, none other than the rated R superstar Edge. Quite frankly, being a heel is basically what put Edge on the map. It's almost what gave him his legacy as being one of the top heels in the business at the time. Um, John Cena, uh, Chris Jericho, Undertaker, Mick Foley, um, anybody he had a program with pretty much gave an A-list match, A-list performance. I always enjoyed him being heel when he had his La Familia faction, him and Christian. Um, just good stuff from Edge as a heel. So number 6 is Edge. Now we get to number 5. Nobody other than Triple H in the Attitude Era was a bigger heel than Triple H in the WWE. Um, I mean, nobody had more heat on him. He had rivalries with everybody. John Cena, The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Mick Foley, Chris Jericho, Kurt Angle, you name it, he's had it. Um, and has beaten them all. Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, you name it, he's beaten them all. They've beaten him, but he is probably one of the most cunning villains in WWE. Uh, Thus the name the Cerebral Assassin. Um, I've always liked him as a heel. The only time I like him as a face is when he's with Shawn Michaels and they're doing the DX thing. But other than that, Triple H definitely is one of the top heels. And that's why we're giving him number 5. Number 4. Now, Rowdy Piper. Basically, when I started watching wrestling and started really understanding wrestling, I should say, Rowdy Piper was probably one of the top villains, if not the top villain that I knew of. Started out watching WWF, so that's how long my knowledge goes. And being Hulk Hogan was one of my favorite wrestlers, Roddy Piper had to be one of my favorite villains. He was so slick with the tongue, but he could back up everything he said. Really a lunatic before the lunatic. Um, Definitely one of those guys that got under your skin, just did not matter, always got under your skin. It was always good to see him get beat, but it was always good to see him do Piper's Pit, even up until the 90s and 2000s, whenever he did a guest appearance on Raw or WrestleMania or any one of these pay-per-views. So Roddy Piper is definitely a heel to remember. So we're giving that one number 4 to Roddy Piper. Now we're going on to number 3, none other than Hollywood Hogan. Now before he became a racist ranter, Hollywood Hulk Hogan, leader of the NWO with Hall and Nash, changing the landscape of the WCW Monday Night Wars with WWE. Literally, Hulk Hogan led WCW along with Nash, Hall, Sting, Flair, the Horsemen, in what was, I think, 86 weeks of beatdownness of WWE. Always had somebody doing his dirty work for him. And it was always a joy to see Hulk Hogan get his in the end. So, number 3, Hollywood Hulk Hogan. Now we come into the top 2, and none other than the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. Woo! Let me just say this. If I had the guts to actually pursue a wrestling career, if they said, Nate, we want you to be a heel, I would have to say, yo, I gotta try. I gotta be the Nature Boy. I gotta be a Nature Boy heel. I gotta be styling and profiling, limousine riding, jet flying, kiss stealing, wheeling, dealing. I'd have to have that persona because it would just make so much sense. I mean, all the men want to be you, all the women want to be with you. I mean, he is the ultimate heel. He had it all, you wanted it. What he had, you wanted it. And if you didn't want it, something was wrong with you. He didn't care who he got at. He'd get at your wife, your daughter, if she was cute enough. Ric Flair was definitely one of those heels that you just didn't want to even look at. Legendary, he had legendary rivalries with the late great Dusty Rhodes, Hulk Hogan, Sting. I mean, goodness, Sting. Once he got to WWE, those that great Hall of Fame match with Shawn Michaels that retired him. He's just one of the best at what he does as being a heel. So, number two, Ric Flair. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the number one man of the night. None other than the chairman of the board, the CEO, the head honcho, the man, Mr. Vincent Kennedy McMahon, aka Mr. McMahon. And why is Mr. McMahon number one? Because let's face it, when you are the boss and you control the company in which you are being the most hated man of, when you play for the team you own, why wouldn't you be number one? I mean, he pretty much can have anybody do whatever he wanted for them. His legendary corporation, then the Dark Ministry, and then Dark Corporation, his historic rivalries with Stone Cold Steve Austin. I mean, it just one for the ages. It basically put Stone Cold Steve Austin on the map. Now everybody knows Vince McMahon pretty much turned heel, or the Mr. McMahon character pretty much turned heel on the Montreal Screwjob SummerSlam after having the referee ring the bell, costing Bret Hart WWE Championship, giving it to Shawn Michaels. As we all know, Bret Hart was on his way out of the WWE and he was going to WCW. Now, coincidentally, a lot of people said even Bret Hart himself said, "Hey, if I was in Vince's shoes, I would have done the same thing. You don't let somebody quit with the title and go to another company. That's just a little risky." But Vince McMahon pretty much, I mean, he was the most hated man in WWE, in professional wrestling at his time. So it goes without saying that he would be number one. So, number one to Mr. Vincent Kennedy McMahon. All right, people, that brings us to the end of top 10. My first top 10 best heels. Definitely going to get a little bit better with these things. And give me some ideas of my next top 10. I know I'm going to do a top 10 face, and I'll probably do top 10 heels of the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, etc., etc. Top faces of the early 90s, 80s, 2000, blah, 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 blah. But definitely give this video 2 thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe and share it with your friends. Like I said, this is the first of many, and we'll catch you next time on Top 10. All right, people, don't forget to like this video and share it with your family and friends. Subscribe to us on YouTube at Middle of the Ring Pro Wrestling Talk. Also, follow us on Facebook at Middle of the Ring, all one word. We're also on Twitter at Middle of the Ring, also all one word.